Hi and welcome, friends. If this is your first time here, my name is Tiffany and I'm the International Witch. Today I'm going to be going over all of the books that I read in January, as well as setting up my bullet journal for February's reading. Just as a review, this is how I rate my stars as well as my spice rating. You're welcome to pause the video and get acquainted. As a disclaimer, these are all my opinions. Reading is very subjective, and you're welcome to love a book that I hate, and vice versa. I'm continuing to use my Tifosi B5 journal. I'll have it linked down below, as well as all the other supplies that I'm using today. Okay, the very first book that I read in January was Mistlefoe by Kimberly Lemming. This is set in her Mead Mishaps series collection. Ruby's father is a blacksmith. Since the king has started claiming all of the mines as his personal property, they're running out of both ore and money. Desperate, her dad steals ore from the mine that belongs to a demon. In retaliation, the ore is cursed to insult every customer the family tries to sell to. So Ruby comes up with a plan to beg the demon to lift the curse. The demon, however, makes a bargain with Ruby. Pretend to be his mate for the dragon's Yule festivities, and he'll remove the curse and give her family exclusive rights to his mine. This was a super short story at only 60 pages, but it was only meant to be like a little holiday novella in the same realm. If you are interested in any of Kimberly Lemming's books, she writes predominantly of Black female main characters, and her writing is hilarious. However, it's also very decisive. There are some people who absolutely adore this series, myself included, and there's those that absolutely hate this series. So it's really up to you. If you go into this book expecting a very serious, drama-filled saga, this isn't the series for you. But if you're going into it wanting to laugh and just have a good time, then I cannot recommend this series enough. This single book covered 3 reading challenge prompts for me. The first one being Romanceopoly, their quarterly event, which is to read a fantasy romance featuring a winter setting or ice magic. And the Goober Readathon, it was the banana bread prompt, which is an overdone trope, and this had a pretend marriage. And then the TBRathon, it covered the Sea of Truth, which needed a BIPOC author. However, I do change the TBRathon to a different book later in the month. But since I read this one during the first of the month live, I got the little badge because it does cover the prompt. But I find a book later that I think covered it a little bit better. There's only one sex scene in this book, so it gets 2 chili peppers, and I gave it 4 stars. I had a blast reading this book, and I know that it was supposed to be a short little novella right off the bat. However, it did kind of upset me that when she got to the demon's land, she agreed to go to this party. She spends an entire week, and she never once let her dad know that she's okay. I couldn't help but wonder throughout the entire book as I was reading just how much her dad was freaking out. He probably thought she died. I wish they had taken a second to let her go back and get a couple of clothes and at least let her dad know she was okay. I don't know why, but that really irked me, so I did take a star off for that. The next book that I read in January was All My Hexes by Hazel Mack. Shadow is a green witch on a girls' trip in the country haven of Pine Gulch. When she gets there, she meets Dane and sparks fly. But when the weekend's over, they both have to return to their regular lives. Shadow loves the big city and has a thriving business there. Dane loves the wide open space of Pine Gulch. Could he give that up to move to the city? This is in the same world as her Haven Ever After series, and it's supposed to be like a prequel to introduce her Pine Gulch Ever After. But honestly, if you read the book Misbehaving with Minotaurs, which was the 8th book in the Haven Ever After series, you learn just as much in that book about Pine Gulch as you do in this book. So if you don't want to read this book, but you have read the Haven Ever After series, I think you'll be able to pick up the Pine Gulch Ever After without needing to read this one. But it was short and cute. It was very much a city girl meets a country boy story, but I was pleasantly surprised that, unlike Hallmark, she doesn't automatically drop her entire life and give up her career and her home to move to be with the country boy. It does end kind of on a cliffhanger where you don't know the decision they come to, but they both know that they love each other. They both know that they're mates. They're just figuring out the logistics of where they want to live when the book ends. And I know we all like to have our stories wrapped up neatly and tied with a little bow, but I do like the realism of it, because in real life, there are a lot of hard choices you have to make, especially in a long distance relationship. So I do like the fact that Hazel Mack made it a point that this is a difficult decision for them and they're still thinking about it, and it may take time to come to a solution. I gave this book 5 stars because I had an absolute blast reading it, and I look forward to reading more from this series. I gave it 3 chili peppers because there are multiple sex scenes, but they're very vanilla. This book fulfilled 2 reading challenges for me. The first one is for Romanceopoly. This counts for Rune Hall, and it is read a fantasy romance with a unique magic system or a slow burn. Anyone who's read the Haven After series will know that the havens and the way that they are set up are completely unique, and I have never heard any other story even come close to it, so that counts for that. And the second is the Goober Readathon. The second reading prompt for January was Sourdough, and it was the first book in a series or a prequel, and this was a prequel. The next book I read was Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. I'm a huge fan of Trevor Noah's comedy. I originally was introduced to him on Comedy Central, and I have since watched a couple of his comedy specials. So I was very interested in reading his biography, especially when I saw the cover. The cover is beautiful and very colorful. Trevor Noah was born in South Africa during a time when the apartheid law was still in effect. So since his father was white, Swiss, and his mother was black, Xhosa, his birth was illegal. Reading his memoir was hilarious, inspirational, and also horrifying. The things that he had to go through would have broken me, but somehow he manages to make it all very funny, and you find yourself laughing along, even though the topics are not funny at all. He really is just such a little ray of sunshine, even in horrible times. So I really wanted this layout to reflect that. And remember how I said that I had found a book that fit the TBRathon better? This is the book. It's a colorful cover, it's a BIPOC author, and it's a nonfiction, which is the City Sea of Truth is nonfiction based. So I was able to check more off with this book. I would highly suggest anyone read this book, especially if you're already a Trevor Noah fan. I was reading some reviews and some people say to read the audiobook because he voices the audiobook himself and it's really funny that way. But I read it on ebook and I adored it. I gave it 5 stars. If you're wondering why I'm suddenly having to use glue to glue these down, it's because I ran out of my normal sticker paper and I thought I bought sticker paper, but instead, apparently I bought plain vinyl paper. I didn't even know that was a thing. So trust me, I spent a good 20 minutes trying to get the back off of this paper only to realize it wasn't a sticker, and I felt so stupid. And I have no clue why I decided to add chili peppers here. I do go back and take those off, but it was just a day for me, I think. Next on my list was a very cozy fantasy romance. It's called Cider, Spice, and Orcish Nights by Zora Black. Maddie inherited her Aunt Hester's orchard, but now there's a lawyer in her bakery delivering a surprise stipulation. She has 1 month to get married or everything gets handed over to her greedy cousin, who has plans to turn the magical orchard into overpriced condos. Desperate, her friend suggests her grumpy orc neighbor Thornak. Thornak has scars and a deep lack of confidence, but he's always loved Maddie. I loved how the author showed him trying so hard even when he's scared. It was a realistic view of how people can self-sabotage when they don't think that they're worthy of love. This book was such a delightful read that I gave it 5 stars. It gets 3 chili peppers because there's multiple sex scenes, but it's very vanilla. It's a very heartwarming story. Cider, Spice, and Orcish Nights also fulfills one of the Romanceopoly prompts, and that is Romance Hall. The prompt is read a book that features a classic romance trope. And of course, it was the fake marriage. I don't know why, but a lot of my stories this month has the fake marriage trope in it. The next book I read was The Baby Dragon Cafe by A.T. Qureshi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Saphira has always dreamed of owning a cafe where dragon owners can bring their little ones in and relax. When her grandmother passes away, Saphira puts every dime into her dream. Unfortunately, the baby dragons continue to set fire to everything, and insurance won't cover the damages. When one dragon sets fire to her expensive espresso machine, she finally accepts that she may have to close her doors. Aiden is the son of a prestigious and rich family, but Aiden hates parties and people, a true introvert. But that's okay. His brother loves the limelight. That is, until his brother dies in an illegal dragon race and leaves behind an egg for Aiden. Dealing with his brother's death and being shoved into the public eye is already hard, but now he has an unruly dragon to take care of. When he meets Saphira and sees her problem, he thinks maybe they can help each other. He'll pay to fix her espresso machine and anything else that goes wrong in the shop, and in return, she'll train his unruly dragon. Now, this was one of those stories that I saw everywhere on TikTok and YouTube. Everyone was talking about it. And whenever you look at the reviews, there's like 130,000 reviews, but it's only got 3 stars. And that's because people either really loved it or they really hated it. It's very split down the middle. I loved it. I think that it is such a cute read. Now, I did get really upset because there is so much sexual tension in this story, but then when they finally confessed their feelings and started to get good, it faded to black. I felt like I had been gypped. All that waiting and just to get a closed door scene, I was so frustrated. But this was such a good book. I could not put it down, and I constantly look forward to being able to pick the book back up. So I rated this book 5 stars, even though I do think it's kind of ridiculous that a business owner would know going in that she's working with fire-breathing dragons and the insurance won't cover anything that's burnt, and yet she has no money set aside for that. But I guess that's just my real-world brain kind of getting in the way of things. So it got 5 stars, and because it was a closed-door scene book, it only gets 1 chili pepper. This book also fulfills a prompt in my Romanceopoly, and that is Commons. Read a popular romance from Book Talk, bestseller, or trending in your feed. Okay, up next is an adorable mystery read. It's The Retired Assassin's Guide to Country Gardening by Naomi Kuttner. Dante is a retired assassin who wants nothing more than to be left alone in a charming little village. However, the residents of Te Kohe, New Zealand, seem determined to bother him. When one of the residents blackmail him into playing bodyguard for the evening, Dante finds himself the prime suspect in a murder case. Although I figured out the murder in like 2 chapters, the characters and writing style had me continuing to read it. I have to say, the second murder mystery in the book was way more interesting. The AA meetings, Assassins Anonymous, with other retired assassins was hilarious. and the way Dante kept reminding himself not to break his streak of days that he hadn't murdered people. I cannot wait to read the next book in this series. I gave The Retired Assassin's Guide to Country Gardening 4 stars, only because, like I said, I figured out the murder and how it happened pretty early on, and I spent a good portion of the book yelling at the detectives, like, how can you not see? It's so freaking obvious. But like I said, the characters were wonderful, and the second murder mystery was so interesting. So the book more than made up for it. Okay, the next 2 books on my list are both by Sylvie Stray, and that's because I read the first book and it was a short, quick one that was so much fun that I instantly got the second book. Book 1 is The Hedge Witch's Guide to Domesticating Demons. Beatrix is desperate. Owning a potion shop is hard work. Her potions are barely sea level. All of her ingredients have expired, and she has loan sharks showing up to collect her debt. But the worst part? Her shop is on the list to be audited by Inspector Vane. If she doesn't prove that her shop is up to his standards, not only will he put her out of business, but he'll also destroy her shop, which is her only home. Out of options, she pulls out the family grimoire and tries to perform a summoning spell. All she needs is a little help, maybe a brownie or helpful sprite. But of course, her spells never go to plan. Instead of a small, cheerful brownie, Bee manages to summon and bind a demon lord. Malphus is ticked that he is bound to a shop that may be destroyed. If it gets destroyed, he'll be stuck under the rubble forever, bound to a broken home. So he decides to help the witch. However, Malphus's help is more like a sledgehammer to everything. I had so much fun reading this book, and at 110 pages, it's a really quick read, but it still had a lot of story to it. And even though it does have a sex scene, the plot was really the main focus and the romance came second, which was a very refreshing take in this genre. So I gave The Hedge Witch's Guide to Domesticating Demons 5 stars because I had so much fun. And it gets 2 chili peppers because it has 1 very vanilla sex scene. It also fulfilled a Romanceopoly prompt for the club Secret Stacks, and that prompt is Undercover Gems. Read a Kindle Unlimited book with under 1,000 reviews. As of me recording this, it has only had 8 total ratings, so I think this completes the prompt quite nicely. The next book I read by Sylvie Stray was A Cursebreaker's Field Notes on Empathic Curses, Troll Rivals, and Falling in Love. Aina is brilliant, meticulous, and by the book. But no matter how hard she tries, she can never live up to her famous mother's expectations. But now an opportunity arises to get just the experience she needs to ace her Master Cursebreaker certification. She needs to break the End's curse. But she curses the fates when she arrives to see Dag Thornroot already there. For the past 3 years, Dag has been showing up to her sites and stealing her work with brute force and sheer dumb luck. When they're forced to work together, Aina has to begrudgingly admit that his troll instincts are actually pretty handy to have around. But when a statue curses them, suddenly Aina can feel all of Dag's emotions, including his desire for her. And she can't cover her own emotions either. This was another extremely interesting book to read. I was fascinated by the way that the author presented curses. The weaving and the ability to see the threads that bound it all together was fascinating to me. And of course, finding out the history of the statue at the very end was a wonderful twist to the story that I was not expecting. I did rate this one lower than I did The Hedge Witch's Guide, and that's because the editing in this one was very, very bad. And I'm not talking just typos. There were entire paragraphs that were duplicated. If the author had had even one beta reader before she published it, they probably would have caught it. For example, there's one specific scene that jumps out in my mind. Dag wakes up in the attic and he has a conversation with the innkeeper, and then the very next chapter starts with him waking up in his bedroom, and having the exact same conversation with the innkeeper again. It's almost like the author changed her mind about how she wanted the scene to go, but didn't delete the previous scene. And there's multiple cases of that, but that was just the largest one for me. So I did take a star off for that. So I gave A Curse Breaker's Field Notes on Empathic Curses, Troll Rivals, and Falling in Love 4 stars. And it only has one sex scene, and it's pretty vanilla, so it gets 2 chili peppers. This book also fulfills a prompt for my Romanceopoly Club Secret Stacks, and that is plot twist pages. The prompt is read a romance with a wild twist or a secret identity. And I think that the way that the statue was handled at the end was a great twist to the story. The next book on the list is The Vampire in the Potting Shed by Haley Edwards. Anna Sartori is a latent werewolf. Since she can't shift, she's always been an outsider to the pack and smothered by her father's overprotectiveness. She finally makes a little slice of peace for herself when an aunt leaves her home behind in a will. Now, Anna has a home outside of the Packlands and a thriving grooming business. Her world is shaken up when she shows up to work to see that someone broke into her shop. They didn't steal anything. No, they left their dog in a posh dog suite to be boarded. Already on high alert, Anna discovers a mysterious stranger in her shed on the brink of death. She doesn't know why she does it, but something makes Anna hide the stranger from her family. While this was an interesting read, there were actually a lot of things that I did not like about this book. First off, it was way too similar to Not His Dragon. I can't go into all the details without giving the entire book away, but let's just say it's pretty much set up exactly the same, but I think Not His Dragon is actually written better. Next, the book ended abruptly. And I don't mean on a cliffhanger, I mean as soon as the book finally got to the plot, it just ended. Like, this didn't even feel like a finished story. It just, as soon as we finally got to the plot and what's going on, the book just ended. So I don't think I will be picking up book 2, even though this was an enjoyable read. So I gave 3 stars to The Vampire in the Potting Shed. And unfortunately, even though this book is a romance, we never actually get to the romance part because she barely has time to have 2 paragraphs with the main character before the book ends. Like I said, as soon as we got to the plot, it ended. So this book gets no chili peppers. This book does fulfill a Romanceopoly prompt for the quarterly events, and the prompt is read a paranormal romance where one character harbors a dangerous secret or a hidden power. I can't tell you why, or it'll give away the book, which is why it's a secret. Okay, rolling right along, we have Alien Jeopardy by January Bell. After work and one too many margaritas, Ellison and her friends wake up to find themselves in space on the alien version of a game show. Each human female is paired up with an alien and has to compete in trials to win. But the aliens are fighting for much higher stakes than the humans realize. Rex has signed up for this show with the promise of a mate and an escape from his home planet that is ruled by a tyrannical king. This is his chance to have a home, wife, and family all rolled into one. However, the stakes are raised when an artificial intelligence takes over the game. Now it's a game of life and death. Now, this was an extremely fun book to read. However, there was one thing that seriously irked me and did take off a star, and that is within 5 seconds of meeting each other, the main male character, Rex, injects her with a mating serum that would start her heat. He doesn't ask her permission, he doesn't get consent, he just sees her and immediately does it. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me, especially considering how high the stakes are for the game. If he wants to win, why would he automatically make it to where his companion can't compete? Like, she's struggling to stay upright, she's feverish, she can't think straight. Why would you do that knowing how important it is for you to win? I don't like the forced mating heat thing. And then, like, when she gets to the point that she's desperate, she's about to fall over and collapse, she's like, okay, let's just get it over with. He's like, no, I don't want to take your choice away. And it's like, buddy, you took her choice away within 5 seconds. Like, you did not get her permission to do that. So I did take a star away for that, but I still really enjoyed this book. So overall, I gave it 4 stars. And there are multiple sex scenes, so it gets 2 chili peppers. This book also fulfilled the prompt for Romanceopoly's Nexus Haul, and that prompt is to read a portal fantasy, multiverse, or space opera romance. And this counts as a space opera romance. Okay, the final spread in my reading journal is full of books that I wasn't exactly thrilled about or just felt meh about. I put them all in one layout. First up, we have Guarded by an Alien Assassin by Honey Phillips. Julie is in the Witness Protection Program, hoping to live a safe, peaceful life as a librarian in a small town. But when her ex-husband is released from prison, suddenly her peace is shattered. Qatar is an assassin tasked to play bodyguard. But when he sees Julie in trouble, he decides he wants to get closer acquainted. But can he do his job without Julie realizing he's not human? This book, while enjoyable to read, wasn't really anything new. There was no plot twist or nothing added to the story. I've read stories like this and they kind of all blend together, so there was nothing that stood out for me for this one. However, this did fulfill a prompt for Romanceopoly's quarterly event, and that was Velvet Blitz. Read a dark romance. Villain main character, mafia, assassin, or dangerous love. Because I found this book pretty meh, I gave it 3 stars. And there is 1 sex scene, so it gets 2 chili peppers. Honestly, Honey Phillips has a lot of really good books, so if you're interested in this author, I would suggest the 7 Brides for 7 Alien Brothers series or the Alien Abduction series. I don't dislike this author, just not this book. My next book is Beowulf. I am a member of the Archivist Guild for Aurelium, and this was our book of the month for January. I'm not going to be rating it just because I don't really think it's fair to rate it compared to modern day literature. Beowulf is one of those stories that you have to read in high school because of its historical value. It's an epic poem that was written in Old English between 700 and 750 AD. Old English is so old that a modern day reader can't understand it. So all of Beowulf had to be translated. So there are many different translations available online. But the most important thing about Beowulf is to remember that during this time, not everyone was literate, and the people who could write were mostly writing books about religion and history. So the fact that this is a fiction, this is an epic poem that was thought important enough to write down is astonishing. I'll leave 2 very interesting YouTube videos linked down below. One is a woman who goes through and explains all the intricacies of the book, and she's very captivating to watch. And the other is an actual theater production of Beowulf in its original Old English and how it would have sounded way back when it was originally written. Next book I read in January was 9 Goblins by T. Kingfisher. I heard a lot about Kingfisher, and this was my very first time ever reading anything of his. The goblins are in a war against the humans and elves, when one powerful but stupid wizard accidentally teleports an entire squadron. The goblins find themselves on the other side of the country behind the human army. Somehow, they need to get back to their side of the battle without dying. Things go from bad to even worse when the squad finds an abandoned human village. But was it actually abandoned? I have mixed feelings about this book. It was told in a 2-person point of view, one being of the goblins and then the other being an elf named Sings to Trees. I actually think Sings to Trees was the only interesting part of the book. A lot of the goblins was slapstick humor and it was pretty pointless. I mean, if you like it, then great for you, but I just found it annoying. So I almost DNF'd this book. But once the goblins and the elf meet up, the story does pick up and is a lot better. So I gave this 3 stars. The final book for January was How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. This book, while it had an interesting premise, was very boring to read. Great Aunt Frances has been famous for her paranoia. She got a fortune read when she was a young girl that said she would be murdered by someone she was close to. So she spent the rest of her life creating a file on everyone she knew just in case she got murdered. Well, come to find out she was right. So now it's up to her great niece Annie to solve the murder based on all of the facts that she was able to gather over her life. As I said, the mystery was good and the premise was great, but unfortunately the writing style was very boring. So I had to give it 3 stars. Okay, now it's time for me to flip back to my books read page and fill all this out. And while I am doing this, I just wanted to take a quick moment to have a little chat with you and let you know that I am not going to be able to post probably for the next 2 months. And that's because my husband and I are moving back to the States. He got a new position that will take us from Naples, Italy to Florida. And with the military, everything is a hurry up and wait game. When they're ready to pack us up, it'll be 2 days of packing and then we're gone. And I have no clue when that'll be, but we're waiting. It should be any week now. And that means I won't have access to my computer or my camera or any of my stuff until we get back to the States. And then we have to wait on our household goods shipment to arrive, and that's going to come across the ocean. So this may be a while until you hear from me again, but I will continue reading, and whenever I do get my stuff back, I'll probably be doing a really long video to catch everyone up. I gotta say, I'm pretty nervous. Every single person that my husband works with has either had their container lost at sea, or they got their container of goods back only to find out that it had been flooded and everything's ruined. So I really don't want our container of all of our personal belongings lost at sea, but believe it or not, it's a lot more common than you think. And of course, there's also a couple of people who had to wait an entire year before they got their stuff. So hopefully, crossing my fingers, everything goes good and it's relatively quick. For my reading bookcase, I created a spine for each of the books that I read on January, and I just digitally put them on my bookcase so I can just put them down as one sticker. I didn't read any books of growth this month, so that is still going to be blank. For my favorite book of January, I selected The Baby Dragon Cafe. Yes, there were others that had a little bit more plot to them, but this one was just so addicting that I couldn't put it down. And at the end of the month, that was the one that I kept thinking about. For my adventures in Aeldia, I decided to start off at 1C, and all of the first prompts are the same, and that is to read a book from the previous year. So I decided to go with All My Hexes since it was written in 2025. So far in 2026, there haven't been any adventures posted, so the adventure board will stay blank for now. And I'm going to add a little marker to my map just so I know where I want to start off at. Next up is my Goober Readathon, and since I completed both prompts for January, I get to put up both the sourdough and the banana bread on Goober's Micro Bakery. Next up is the TBRathon. I wanted to add the cover of each book I read for each town, but I also didn't want to cover up any of the town names or any of the pretty designs that Leandra had put on the map. So I went into Photoshop and I put the name of the town on top of the book, and I'm probably going to have to do that for the rest of the challenge because I really don't want to cover up the cute little buildings. Okay, next up is my Romanceopoly, and I'm going to start by marking all of the places on my map that I completed a prompt for, and that includes Nexus Hall, Rune Hall, Commons, and Romance Hall. Next, for my extracurricular club Secret Stacks, I completed 2 of the prompts, Undercover Gems and Plot Twist pages. And for the quarterly events, I have completed the Winter Olympics. Okay, now it's time for us to set up the new layout for February. For February, I was inspired by this photo. I just got it on one of those free wallpaper sites. And it made me laugh so hard because the dragon looks so proud of his human. Like, hey, babe, look at the camera. Look at my woman. Like, I could just see him as being like a golden retriever for his human female. So that was the starting point for February. Then I decided that this would be like a really cheesy Valentine's that he's sending to his human female. If you're interested in romance stories where a dragon is the main male love interest, then my all-time top 3 favorite dragon stories are I Married a Dragon by Regine Abel, The Witch Slayer by Opal Rain, and That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. These are my top 3 all-time favorite dragon stories, so I think you would enjoy them too. I'm definitely looking forward to moving back to the States just so I can get some more sticker paper. If you're interested in February's book layout, I will have this up on my website for free download. I have rearranged my grimoire section so that I could separate the grimoire pages from the bullet journal pages, so just look for the link at the top if it looks a little different than you're used to. Now it's time for a final walkthrough of all of the books that I read in January. I hope you had fun going through each of these books with me. Is there any that stood out or that you're interested in reading after hearing about them? If you've lasted this long, can you leave me an emoji down in the comments? Let's see. How about a star? If you've made it this far, leave me a star down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, consider subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. Hopefully I'll get to see you all in a couple of months back on the stateside. If you're looking for more adventures, here's a video that YouTube thinks you'll like. Love you. Bye.